Hello, welcome to SoundBridge Academy. In this lesson, we'll be talking about audio and MIDI clips. Now, a very important distinction at first is how we make selections and how we actually select the entire clip and move it around. So, selecting anything would be clicking anywhere in the blank space, just like this, where our audio is or where MIDI is, except on the actual name line of the clip. If you click that, you actually select the entire clip and you can move it around. Now, if you just want to make a selection, you can do it as such. Click anywhere in the free space, just drag, and that's it. If you wanted to move these, you would have to click this line on top that defines the clip's length. So you could move it, or you could actually copy it by dragging and clicking Control at the same time before dropping it. But the selection is made as such. Now, that's a very important distinction. If you right-click anywhere on the clip, these are the actions you get. If you click on the actual clip's name like that, these are the actions you get. So they do differ. Now, let's go over these first. So you can cut, copy, paste, duplicate, or delete, just as in any other DAW. You already are familiar with cutting, copying, pasting, deleting. Duplicate would mean that you're just duplicating the same piece of audio or the same piece of clip, because it could be MIDI in question. You could also duplicate MIDI, and it will actually copy the same clip right at the ending of that clip. So duplicating, and the shortcut is Control-D on a PC, Command-D on a Mac, be just that, copying. That would allow you to copy a clip infinitely, as many times as you want to. The same thing applies to MIDI. You could rename the clip, and for each one of these, as you can see, if there is a shortcut, you have it written right there. You could edit info text for the clip, and that's a small info text that comes right here, where you can actually write some notes on that specific clip if there is something that needs to be remembered about it. Because remember, you might open this project a long time into the future, and notes on clips like this would be quite helpful, maybe for yourself alone, or maybe for some other producer if somebody's making a remix of your track. So that's a really neat functionality too. You could extract the grooves. We'll talk about grooves during the course. But a groove would actually be a specific shuffle of the rhythm of the drums. So in order to show you what the groove actually feels like, what it is I'm going to play you a loop that actually has a groove to it. If you can notice on this timeline, some of these notes are actually late to their, line on the timeline. If I divide this into 16s, you see these are late, and the fact that they are being late to the punch, to the time, gives them a certain feel, a certain groove. Listen to this. So if I wanted to transfer that groove onto another piece of material, let's say a MIDI material, I could extract that groove like this. And now that the groove is extracted, it would show up right here in my groove's name. I could, of course, save that groove to my groove library like this. Now it's saved if I want to use it in another project, in another song. But I have that groove, that time signature that each one of these drums is giving off. And I can apply it to, let's say, MIDI content. So I'll just use a hat on a MIDI channel like this. I'll make a new MIDI clip like this. Set the MIDI clip. Okay, I will write some notes. Let's see if I wanted to make those notes 16s. So let's say medium, even less, wide. Okay, so 16s like that, every 16th note. Now I have that. Now I can apply this groove to the MIDI content so it doesn't actually strike on the line, but so that it's actually late. as well as these are late, to follow that groove of that audio, I can drag and drop this groove right there onto the MIDI clip, or in the MIDI clip, I can choose for the groove from none to the groove I extracted, as such. Now these are going to follow that groove. Let me show you what that sounds like only on the hats. Now, if I remove that groove, so you see, that's the difference between something that is straight on the line and shuffled like this. And you have a lot of grooves that you can apply from the core library of Ableton. You have a lot of grooves that you can choose: Latin percussions, hip hop, MPC grooves from popular drum machines. So swinging and grooving your drums and your instruments, your melodies, can greatly help in adding some, feel to the groove of the song. And it's all in the timing and velocities of these. So I could also extract the subtle amplitude differences between these and apply those too onto my MIDI. So aside of, recording the timing of these, the amplitude and their volume level would also play a role in applying this velocity change and applying that to this MIDI pattern. So doing essentially this to the notes just by applying the velocity that was taken from scanning the volume of these hits. We could deactivate the clip, and as you can see, a shortcut for that is 0 on numpad. Do it like this. Deactivated clips do not actually play once the playhead goes over them. So let me demonstrate that. Now if I deactivate it, nothing. Yeah. So the clips that are deactivated, they do not play logically. You could consolidate clips as such. If I doubled this clip and now I consolidated with a Control J, I will get one clip. And now this is one piece of audio. So it was re-exported and imported into the project as the same loop, but twice the length. You could show yourself that same loop in the browser, right there, or in Explorer of Windows. You could show fades on the loop. You can also show those fades right here. Those are fade-ins and fade-outs. Fade in right there, fade out right there, where you can also actually control the curve of that fade. We talked about these fades, and if they were applied in a minimum amount by default, which you can set in preferences, if you remember. You could reset fades if there were any made. You could loop the selection, meaning that now the loop is turned on and the loop length is set exactly to this clip. So now if I played it, it was just going to repeat forever like this. Just like that. If I wanted to shorten this clip, let's say as such, I could crop that clip. Crop it. And now this clip's length is back to original length. It's only half the duration that it was. We could freeze this track. Now we will get into freezing tracks later on in the course. It's a very important functionality that we can find in many DAWs. In Ableton, it's really well implemented, and you can use this for many different purposes aside of letting your CPU breathe. Now, some of the coolest features that Ableton has is converting audio to MIDI, and that can be done in several different ways for different material. So let's say this loop that I showed you before, I wanted that in MIDI. I could click that loop and say slice to a new MIDI track. Now what it's going to do is, by the detection of transients, by the detection of these specific hit points for each one of these drum hits, is going to slice it up into small pieces and put it in a new MIDI track using a drum rack, a sampler full of samplers like this that has each one of those hits separately, and then it's being triggered by MIDI like that. So it should sound initially the same as the one we had before, but now it's just represented as MIDI notes and separate hits. So that's the same thing. One thing that could be a bit off is these starts of each one of the samples. So if we moved those a bit, that would turn out to be better. But basically, it does a really good job of slicing that up. And what we can do now is just move these around up and down using different slices, different pieces of this loop to play at different points in time. So rearrange them, really easy. Now let's go over some more of these features. Let's say I have this drum loop and I wanted that drum loop in MIDI. What I could also do is convert this to a MIDI track, but convert it like drums. So Ableton is going to scan this and try to recognize what is a hi-hat, what is a snare, what is a kick drum, and try to replay that with the drums of its own. Like this. So the original and the scanned one. So giving you the same thing, just giving you the MIDI, and then, of course, you can change the samples that are used to play that. So you can change any of these and actually apply this kind of a drum pattern to the drums of your own in MIDI. Now, the next thing we can do is use this on melodies. So let's say I have a monophonic melody like this. So just a piano playing a melody with one note playing at a time. I could right-click it and say convert melody to a new MIDI track. So Ableton is going to scan that and try to recreate that melody using a synthesizer of its own, try to recognize the sound actually. So let's see what that sounds like. So you get that same melody. Instead of trying to replay it, you can just scan it like that and get the melody written down for you by Ableton. The next thing we can do is try that with polyphonic melodies, so meaning chords playing. So that is a harmony. So Ableton is going to try to recognize the notes for each one of these chords and write those down for us. Let's try that now as convert harmony to a new MIDI track. So the original. Let's try what it's done. Very nice. And he also recognized this time that it is a piano, so he actually used a piano of its own. So let's get over the last functionality from right here within the sequencer is adding color or changing color of this clip, just like that. So you can color code your projects if you always wanted to have your, let's say, drums blue, bass red, lead synthesizers or guitars yellow. You can color code your projects for an easier, hawk eye view of the project. If you just wanted to have a glance and see what's playing, it would be really easy for you if you saw that the playhead is going over some blue, red, and yellow clips. You would immediately know what's playing at the moment. Those kinds of organizational things really help with music production. And once you get to have your projects big with a lot of channels, or even not, you're going to see the importance and how much easier this makes music production. But you don't really realize that unless you actually do that from the beginning. If this doesn't become your routine, you can, as I did for many years, produce music and you don't miss it. But it's things like that that actually help you if you incorporate these into your routine. They really help you a lot in everyday's work. They make everything faster and more convenient. I mean, that's why they are there in the end. So if you teach yourself to use them as a routine, these will help you a lot going forward. And you don't want to get to that moment where you just discover something after 4 years of music production saying, wow, if I knew this, everything would have went so much faster and easier for me. So you want to incorporate things like this from the very beginning. Now let's go over the properties of this audio clip right down here. In the first part of this, you can see the clip's name, color, which we can change also right here, as you've seen. So right there, it's going to change too. We see the time signature of the clip because we can change the time signature of a signal clip too. We can exchange the groove of this clip, hot swap it as Ableton calls it, and we can apply a different swing or a shuffle to it. What we can see right here would be the shuffle if we had any. So if I extracted the groove from this clip, as they call it, it would be a custom shuffle pattern made from this clip's timing. As this clip is really straight in timing, nothing going off, it's going to be a straight shuffle, but nevertheless, Ableton will extract it and we'll have it right there. So now we can choose no shuffle or demo loop. That was extracted from right here. Once that's done, we can commit to that loop and our audio would be warped to this shuffle. Now, what does warped mean? Well, if we get more into the properties of this audio clip, we see many more functionalities that Ableton offers for audio clips. First of all, we see the name, the properties of the file. It's 44.1 kilohertz, 24-bit, 2-channel stereo file. We can edit that file in an external editor that we did not select in the preferences, if you remember the lesson from before, from the software setup. We can save this clip if it was mangled in any way, if anything was changed in it. We could reverse the sample, of course, playing backwards. Check it out. Reverse it again, get back to normal. We could choose that everything we do with this sample, like pitch shifting or any of these warp capabilities and processing of the actual waveform, would be done in high quality mode. We could load this clip, this actual audio clip, into RAM memory and keep it there. So if this clip was in RAM memory, it would be much easier to play it, meaning that if at any point your hard drive can't keep up with reading all the audio you have, if you remember, we talked about this when talking about the transport bar, we have an indicator right there that tells us if our hard drive is getting overloaded. We could load this clip into RAM and then it will be straight into our random access memory in our computer. It will be really easily accessible by the computer. We would never have any lag in reaching it and playing it. Now, some basic functionalities right here is transposing and gain change for our clip. So if you see this clip, if I change the gain of it, you see I can change the gain directly on the clip without touching the channel's volume. So I can make it louder or quieter. So this is your general clip gain. We can detune it, transpose it, of course. Now, the quality and the character of this transpose and detune depend on this warp functionality. Now, having warp disengaged, this loop plays as it was originally intended, so nothing was done to it. The timing of the loop is always at the BPM that it was originally produced at, and that is not by accident the exactly 128 BPM. So it is still in line with the grid with our project. Now, if I change the project BPM right here to 130, 145, you can see that now our loop is not really following the timing of our project. So our loop would not be consistent with the actual metronome of the project. Now, if I engage warp on this loop, warp would try to analyze my loop and see what BPM the loop is actually at. Now, since I mangled the loop a little bit to show you some of the functionalities before, I'm just going to quickly reload it so that it comes to a default state of how it is once you first import it. Now, when you import a short loop, which is being warped automatically, this is what it looks like. It has some warp markers, transient markers, which we will talk about, of course, and it's warped by default because it's a short loop, and this is what we have set up in our preferences. Now, this loop is warped, meaning that Ableton has determined its actual BPM and is going to warp this loop to follow our master BPM of the project. So now if I change the BPM up or down, doesn't matter, he would speed up or slow down, actually time stretch this loop so that it always follows the tempo. So now I can slow down the master tempo, play the loop, and it's just gonna play slower or faster. So you could actually turn this into drum and bass quite easily. Now, going back to the original tempo, sounds normal. Now, what is warping? Well, warping has a couple of different algorithms to stretch out audio files so they would always coincide with the master tempo, follow the master tempo. And the default one chosen in Ableton right now, and you can change this in preferences, of course, is beats. Beats is good for samples that have drums mainly. Transient, rich material. Transient meaning something that has a strong impact that is really important for the character of the sound, like drums do. Now you can choose different algorithms that have different characters, and we use them for different kinds of material so that the material would still preserve the most of its character once we time stretch it to our BPM. Now, what is time stretching? Well, that means that if we wanted to prolong the length of this audio track or shorten the time of this audio track, the length of this audio track, so its time duration, we could do that without changing its pitch, or vice versa, we could change its pitch without changing its time duration, which is called time stretching or pitch shifting at once. It is the same algorithm that's taking care of that. Why? Well, if you look at a normal resampling way of doing that, just as a DJ would slow down a record or speed up a record to have something playing, faster or slower, we would change the pitch of these drums. So now they're normal. Let's take a listen. Now, if I speed it up, Ableton is still going to keep its duration, but the pitch of the drum is going to change. You see, it's going to be higher in pitch, just as if you would have spun a vinyl faster. If I slow it down, so it actually sounds like a vinyl playing faster or slower. Now, why does this not work for us all the time? Well, sometimes we actually want this slower or faster without messing up the pitch, because it could be not just drums, it could be a melody right there, and we want to retain that pitch element. We want to retain the note at which something is playing. Now we can engage one of these other algorithms that actually do some time stretching, meaning that they employ an algorithm that is going to change the duration of the audio without changing its pitch, or it's going to change the pitch without changing its duration. As such, you see that? You can check through these different algorithms to see which one fits best for your material. As I said, mainly beats is very good for drums. Tones is very good for single pitch instruments, meaning if we have an audio file that has only one note in it. Texture would be an audio file that has more than one note in it, but we need to preserve that tonality, meaning let's say we have chords or multiple instruments playing. Complex would be the most complex of all of these, but would spend more CPU power. So always think about that too. So it works the best creates the least amount of artifacts when changing BPM to really high difference from what it originally is, what the audio originally is in, the speed that it actually was recorded at, but it spends more CPU power. Now we have these warp markers that Ableton puts right there. And what are they used for? Well, if you see these are just transients. And if I move any, it's going to create a warp marker right there. These are just automatically detecting any hit, any percussive or transient change within this sound. And I can create new warp markers. And what that means is I can stretch out and change the duration of, let's say, a single piece of this audio without changing the duration of the rest of it. Just like this, let's say this middle part. So listen to that. So I can move these around, play with it, do as I like. And Ableton will employ this pitch shifting or time stretching algorithm to do everything I want. So I really have a lot of control over this WAV file, over this audio. Let me just undo all of these. So warp markers are actually used to connect to a specific timing in this audio file so that I could move that time anywhere on the timeline. And they will affect everything before and after that until the next warp marker, meaning that if I made a new warp marker before and after this one, and now if I stretch, it's going to stretch only until these two. It won't affect anything after and before the warp markers that were adjacent to it. This is something that digital technology really gives us to the best of its abilities, because this kind of manipulation of audio files was unimaginable, let's say 20 years ago. But today we have many, many more complex algorithms to mangle audio files, and you can even use this to experiment with it, not just to correct errors in drumming or correct errors in human errors in timing when drumming something. You can actually use this for creative purposes, do something really crazy with it, go wild. Now this file, as you can see at the ending right here, it can be looped or not. So I could loop this file. Loop it, meaning that once I stretch out its ending, it will stretch out the same loop and it's going to repeat itself over and over and over. This helps me to make an arrangement fast, meaning that I loop this exact same thing over and over and over. Now, if I change something within one, as you can see, they all change. See, the entire file changes through the entire timeline. So that's how easy it is to change one instance of a file that will be changed throughout the entire song. Now we have more options in editing this specific audio clip, but we will talk about this when we get to automation. Now let's talk about MIDI clips. MIDI clips, just as audio clips, have certain properties, and we can assign a name to them, color, time signature, a groove actually, and these actually contain notes, so MIDI information, just like that. We can zoom in, zoom out. So to compare them to audio clips, they also have similar controls over, let's say, the loop functionality, so that we can change anything in this clip and it would repeat itself over and over and over again. But also we have some special abilities only connected to MIDI files. In this MIDI, and let's play this so that you could hear what it actually does. I have a really simple instrument on that channel. Now let's say I wanted to make this entire clip play twice as fast. I could do this, divided by 2, and now, or twice as long. standard mathematical operations. I could reverse the notes. So just reversing the entire MIDI clip. Just as I would do with audio, but this is MIDI information being reversed. So now I still have the notes playing normally. They don't sound reversed as these drums would. I can inverse these notes. So switching up and down like that. I could apply legato to these notes, meaning that each note will now end only once the next one starts. So he will prolong the duration of each note until the beginning of the next one. Or I could duplicate the region. As everything here, let's say like this, as everything is selected, if I duplicate it, it would just duplicate the entire region like that, and I would have the same clip, just double in timing, just as we did with audio. Now there's many other ways that we can manipulate MIDI within Ableton, but we will get to those once we get to composing, since we do have many audio effects for audio channels and MIDI effects for MIDI channels, where we can actually manipulate MIDI data. And also we have envelopes for MIDI clips, and we will get to those once we start dealing with automation. Of course, you can right-click a MIDI clip and also have almost the same functionalities as for the audio clip, but you can export MIDI clips, actually save them to a certain specific place on your hard drive. Now, one thing we did not get over is these slice to new MIDI track things. Well, you remember I said we have these transient markers right here. We could slice this entire audio into a new MIDI track and say we create one slice per transient. And these are transients. You see these little gray ones? So we could slice this entire loop, and now we would have the same thing playing, but using MIDI. So this is the audio, just an audio file, and this is the MIDI of the same thing. How do we do that? Well, it was actually sliced. This entire audio loop was sliced into pieces of each one of these hits. And each one of those pieces was actually triggered consecutively right here, so that we would get the exact same thing, but now in MIDI. Meaning that now I can manipulate this, change what hits and when, and just change the order of these drums really easy without cutting, pasting, dealing with a lot of audio manipulation. See that? Very easy, but we will get more into this once we start sketching up our own ideas. On the grand scale of controlling your project, you can, of course, duplicate time. So you can duplicate all of this just like that. And anything you select, you could Control D, duplicate, or you could actually select a piece of something just like that, copy it, and paste it anywhere. See that? Really easy. Now to do this, I could actually duplicate the time that is actually selected right here. So I could duplicate this time. So it's going to duplicate everything that was selected in this loop region. Or I could cut this time, cut that piece, that portion of time. I could even do it less so that you would see what happens. So I could cut this piece of time, and it would just cut that and bring everything closer together. So now we have a really different kind of arrangement. So you can cut a piece of time, just like, let's say, all of this would just disappear. And instead of just having all of that disappear like this, it would just bring this together right there. So it would cut the time and remove that from our timeline. Now this is really neat when we get into editing large projects where you actually want something just to disappear, because deleting a piece of time like that and then selecting everything and bringing it closer right here. That's tedious. So we have shortcuts that help us to manipulate the timeline in our sequencer much easier.